Welcome to Coruzant Technologies, home of the Digital Executive Podcast.
Welcome to the Digital Executive. Today's guest is Sarah Nagy. A former data scientist, Sarah Nagy serves as co-founder and CEO of Seek AI, an emerging analytics automation startup based in New York. Sarah most recently led the consumer data team at Citadel's Azure Capital, and prior to Citadel, led the quant arms at two successfully exited startups and developed algorithmic trading strategies at ITG. Sarah has a master's degree in finance from Princeton and dual bachelor's degrees in astrophysics and business economics from UCLA. Good afternoon, Sarah. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Love talking about data, and we're going to have some really fun stuff to talk about today. So again, Sarah, appreciate you making the time, hailing out of that New York area. And we're going to jump right into the question here. What inspired you to transition from leading data teams at Citadel and other startups to founding Seek AI? Can you share that story behind its inception?
Yeah, I was leading data teams or working as a, individual contributor for over a decade in, mostly financial services and also a couple startups. And so I had basically been working with data for a long time. Prior to that, I actually came from a research background. I was actually an astrophysicist at UCLA and Caltech. And, it's kind of what motivated me to go into this career path of working with data, because I really wanted to be doing, research into all the cool data sets that were available to me. And so what ended up kind of motivating me to start Seek was it was a combination of a pain point I kept experiencing and also, a technology that I was seeing developing. So in terms of the pain point, I basically was spending a lot of my time doing pretty manual work. And I wasn't necessarily expecting it. And it also felt kind of inefficient. Some of that work involved helping non-technical people just get, very basic answers that they needed to questions that they had about data, or putting together like quick reports for non-technical people. So I'd get a lot of people come out to my desk asking me to put together a heat map or whatever it was that they needed. And that kind of resulted in me going into the data and often writing a bunch of code. And it just felt like very repetitive code that I was writing over and over again, but never quite, the same. So it was really hard to automate. And then at the same time, basically started following large language models around 2018. And by 2020, I noticed that they were much, much better at code generation, which I thought was like the coolest thing ever. And that's, around 2021, 2020, that's when it started occurring to me like, wow, these models could start automating a lot of this work that I'm doing, every day. And that was really the origin of Seek. I ended up starting Seek September 2021. And yeah, it was basically those two trends really ended up converging.
Thank you for sharing that story. And I appreciate you really wanting to do better for yourself or your customers writing a lot of code, but you actually found a solution to a problem. And that's what really gets me excited, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that come on the podcast and talk about their story, which of course, everybody's story is unique, but at the end of the day, they're trying to make the world a better place and really help people be more efficient at what they do. So I appreciate that. And Sarah, next question, how has your experience in developing algorithmic trading strategies and leading quant arms influenced your approach to analytics and automation at Seek AI?
Well, I think it makes my background maybe a little bit unusual for a data scientist. I started out doing, I guess it was pretty hardcore. I was a quantitative analyst working on very large data sets that were related to, trading data at, I think, like less than nanosecond frequencies, which isn't even considered high frequency, but it's pretty high frequency to me. So yeah, I was, working on classical machine learning algorithms, and I was really more of a quant and a data scientist throughout my career working with machine learning algorithms. But at the same time, the field that I got pretty interested in was called alternative data, which means very large, unusual data sets. For example, like when you hear about quants looking at satellite data at hedge funds, trying to like count cars in parking lots at Walmart or whatever, that kind of data. Working with that kind of data requires good data analysis skills as well, not just data science. And alternative data ended up being the focus of my career for, basically every company I worked at after ITG, which was my first job. And, because of that, I ended up doing quite a lot of data analysis, descriptive analytics, in addition to machine learning and data science, which is more what I was trained in. So I think that did kind of give me this unique perspective because I saw how painful and mundane a lot of data analysis was. And I was also learning a lot about the type of technology that could be used to automate these kind of mundane pieces. So that kind of background, I think, was pretty helpful for me to have to be able to form Seek. But yeah, I would say that's how developing those trading strategies ended up helping me.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And absolutely, there's obviously a lot of analytical work that you did in these areas that certainly contributes to what you're doing today. So I appreciate the backstory on that, Sarah. And Sarah, can you elaborate on the core technologies and innovations that Seek AI is leveraging to differentiate itself in the analytics automation space?
Well, I would say the biggest technology is definitely large language models. We've been building with large language models since the very beginning of Seek. It was kind of the whole reason I decided to start the company. I was just noticing how much better the models were getting. And, code generation is the core of what we do. So how the product actually works is it's really meant for everybody in a business to be able to use to ask questions that they have about the data and be able to get answers faster and, have processes in place to ensure that the answers are accurate. So in addition to using large language models to generate the kind of code that's needed to get those answers, we also have other technology that we've invented as well. We actually have 2 patents pending from 2022 and 2023 involving certain types of guardrails around quality checking the outputs of large language models and making sure that things aren't in there that we don't want, like hallucinations, which I think everyone's heard of at this point. Another innovation was last year, we set the record on an academic benchmark called the Yale Spider benchmark, which is, basically measuring machine learning model quality on turning text into data. And so, yeah, in addition to the technology that already existed, we were able to bring some of our own technology into the world as well.
I love that. You're constantly innovating. I didn't know that you were leveraging some of those LLMs and generative AI, but I know over time with some of your ingenuity, some of your ideas combined with some of the technologies that are out there today, you're going to make Seek AI the next big thing. So I appreciate that. And Sarah, last question of the day, how do you see the role of analytics and data science evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? And what role do you envision Seek AI playing in this future?
I think it's a really interesting question. And I think probably the number one thing is, basically increasing awareness and adoption of natural language querying for data. I think a lot of companies need this. A lot of companies have lots of data and not a lot of data people to analyze it. So as a result, a lot of that data just gets underutilized, and the return that I think companies are hoping to get just is not achieved because, you can really only have a small fraction of your employees accessing the data and asking new questions and getting new answers and taking action on that. And so this year, we've seen more awareness already, businesses wanting to query their data with natural language. And I definitely see that increasing in the future. The way that I see Seek kind of shaping this space is I think that our approach is kind of a few different things. Number one is a really fanatical just focus on accuracy. We have so many different guardrails and features in our products that some of our customers even have asked us to turn some of them off so that, they can, maybe get less accurate data without necessarily going through one of our safety workflows, which is a preference we've actually seen, believe it or not, in some companies. But most companies we work with really like the safety features. And for us, as we evolve, it's all about how do we keep the safety and accuracy where it is while making the product and the workflows just easier and faster to use. So I think that, when we talk about like 3 years, 5 years from now, we have a lot of people out there saying, by that time, hallucinations will be a thing of the past. Well, when you think about what that actually means, it doesn't mean that the models are necessarily going to be so smart that, they never are wrong. It's possible that you could just be asking the models the wrong questions or giving them bad training data. And that's why you see them hallucinate. So I think when people say that hallucinations will be a thing of the past, they're really kind of saying that the models are just going to get better at asking you for what they need to, give you better results. So anyway, that's all kind of part of, the first thing, which is accuracy. And then, I think in terms of other types of things, like I think having, products like Seek be more embedded into people's workflows is definitely another thing. And with those two things, I think that adoption should continue to increase, over the next 3 to 5 years.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. And you're right. You need to have that, I call it the symbiotic relationship between human and machine. It's going to be an ever evolving relationship there to obviously keep the accuracy there, reduce hallucinations. I don't know if they'll all be there, but maybe we can get better at providing better data to the machine so we can get a better output. But I really appreciate that, your insights for the future. And Sarah, it was certainly a pleasure having you on today, and I look forward to speaking with you real soon.
Great. Yeah. Again, this was great to be on, and thanks again.
Bye for now.